Samkelo Blom, welcome to the Intercultural Toolbox. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Richard, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm also looking forward to this as well.
Yeah, it's a really great honour to have you on the show, and I think you are the ideal person to guide us through a topic which I want to dive into today, which is really about the question of national culture. So national culture is my day-to-day. It's a very useful paradigm in a lot of situations. It's very often when teams come together, when organizations start working together, it's somewhere there in the background. It may even at times come to the foreground and really start to either throw up issues or in some cases throw up great opportunities. So it's often the key to unlock great potential. But I'd like you to take us on a trip to South Africa today with this idea of national culture and see if this key still does that unlocking job in the South African context. Because, South Africa is known for many things, amongst which is its diversity. So, the topic we must really talk about today is the national cultural level of South Africa. But before we do that, could you say a little bit about who you are and how you come to be sitting in the Intercultural Toolbox podcast today?
Excellent. My name is Samkelo. Surname is Blom. I'm based in South Africa, Cape Town, next to Table Mountain, one of the 7 wonders of the world. Beautiful place to be in, lovely weather, sunny Cape Town now. Winters get cold and rainy like any other winter, but we don't have snow. Unlike you in Helsinki, we don't have snow. Born and bred in South Africa. Present, I've worked in various corporates, JSE listed companies. Also worked for non-profit organizations as well. In human resources, learning and development. 3 years ago, I started my own company, Nomadu Consulting. We specialize, our core value proposition is diversity, inclusion, and belonging. So we help companies, we help teams, we help individuals around diversity, inclusion, and belonging. We also work with leaders in one-on-one, coaching them on that so that they also can lead better, but also to help them to be aware of their own unconscious biases and how to mitigate those in their roles and function. So our offices were in Cape Town, we also in Joburg and also KZN. But we're also fortunate to have clients that are global, and that's how me and you met. We've got clients in America. We're doing work now for a major global pharmacy company in Africa, Ivory Coast, Kenya, Angola. So we are across the globe, yeah. And then also I'm a member of the Global Think Tank. The Global Think Tank is a group of people who work in diversity and inclusion across the globe. There's Marcelo in Argentina, there's Trish, my colleague in Australia, there's Roberta in Italy, there's Dawn in America, and there's our mutual friend Dave in Ireland, where LinkedIn and Google have got offices as well. And then there's Rajil in Thailand, and then there's Hanley, my colleague, ex-South African. Both Rajil and Hanley are ex-South Africans, but they are part of the global. Hanley is in America, Rajil is in Thailand, and then there's myself as well. We meet every quarter to share trends around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like some of the topics we've spoken about are the George Floyd, the trends in diversity and inclusion, but also how we do our work, what is best practice. I'm fortunate to work in that group, to be part of that group, because we get to support each other, show each other best practices, but also learn. For me, what I like most about it, it's the global exposure. We were supposed to do a session with Trish for the client in the US, but for their staff in Hong Kong, Australia. So it gives me a broader global picture, not that South African. So in a nutshell, Samkelo does diversity, inclusion, and belonging.
That's a fabulous summary of what you do. Tell me more about the think tank. How did that spring into existence? Is it a kind of spontaneous thing amongst friends, or is it a more formal institution than that?
So the global think tank came out during COVID in March, April 2020. At Nomatu, we've got our global strategic partner, Kaleidoscope. They are in Chicago. Their website is www.kaleidoscope.com.
Right.
So they are our global partner for diversity and inclusion. Practically, it means that when we have a global client, like we have clients now in the US and the rest of Africa, we partner with them on skill and expertise. And then we just reached out to people that they also work with as well, other consultants. And we said, hang on, why don't we form an informal group to share skill and expertise and have relevant topics as well?
So that sounds fantastic. So it's a kind of special group around that kaleidoscope community, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe a great model for others who could benefit in the same way. Um, so tell me that 3 years ago you started Namatu. What prompted you? Was it something that happened in your life? Was it trends that you saw in South Africa, or what was the moment that moved you into this new world?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier on, I've worked in various organizations and various companies, some of them listed, academia, media companies as well. South Africa has a rich history. Like any other country, we will have a history. But also we have a painful history of apartheid and policies that undermined and segregated a particular group of people. So there was a need to reconcile and to build the country, and that's where Mandela came in to reconcile and build a better society. Even though that work was done, but now people have to work together in companies to best understand each other, how they deal with conflict, how they push productivity in the workplace as well. So as I was working in corporate, I always saw that something was missing. We had the right intent, we had the right legislation, but we were not connecting at a human level. And there were certain biases that were coming out. And even though you would bring women or bring black or African people, colored or Indian, it was almost like a melting pot, almost like something was not working. And that's where Nomatu was born, to say, how can we create an organization that becomes a catalyst for integration, for change in the workplace? Almost like a safe space where you say, help me to understand you because we're going to be working together. Hey, you are transgender. Hey, you are gay. You are lesbian. You are young. You are old. Hey, you are black. You are white. How do I understand you? How has our history, how has your history, your story impacted you as an accountant, as an engineer that I'm now working with in 2021 in an office in Johannesburg, in an office in Port Elizabeth? Because if we don't deal with those kind of stuff, with our belief system and our upbringing, it's going to impact how we work. Because me and you, I might see the glass half full, you might see the glass half empty, but guess what? It's the same glass. So that's where Nomatu was born.
Right.
But also what Nomatu does very well in South Africa, you're going to hear a lot, and given our history, challenges with education, that there is a lack with black talent. So Nomatu goes out of its way to look for exceptional black candidate. By black, I mean African, Indian, colored managers, executives, C-suite, and present them to corporates as well. So that's how Nomatu was born. So it's beyond transformation, it's beyond HR, and that is our core.
So the theme which kind of connects your earlier roles to what you're doing now seems to be the development of talent in a diverse workplace. Would I be right to say that?
Yeah, you are right. Partly it's that, but also what connected me to this is to see what happens day to day in corporate as well, where there's tension, where there's conflict, where there's misunderstanding, where there is tiptoeing against or on issues because we don't want to offend the male or the female, the black or the whitey, where we must be politically correct, where issues are not dealt with. So Nomatu said, hey, hang on, let's be the catalyst for change in corporates.
Well, this is where I want to go a little deeper with you today because we're already putting this idea of national culture to the test. You talked a lot about the internal diversity of South Africa. So if we think about, you mentioned international clients, if we think about someone coming into South Africa from outside, how meaningful is it to talk about South Africa, or what is the internal diversity that they need to know about in order to even get started with navigating in South Africa?
Yeah, I think when Nelson Mandela came into power and there was his inauguration in 1994, there was a lovely theme that came up. It said, and I love those words, and they still ring true to this day: one nation, many colors. So South Africa is one nation, so many cultures. So South Africa is one nation, is one country, but inside South Africa, one gets to experience and get exposure to various cultures, whether those cultures are Afrikaner, English, Venda, Zulu, Tsitonga, Xhosa, Sotho. So it's one country, but there are various cultures. And one must not assume that because a person is black, they are then monolithic in terms of one. There's such diversity in terms of what we like, how we express ourselves, what we feel passionate about. And those cultures become like what we would call in Afrikaans, one of the languages we speak in South Africa, Potjikos. Because if you bring them all together, they then bring the richness. Yes, we've got the big five. Yes, we've got the lion. Yes, we've got the cheetah. But also, we've got a diverse landscape, the rivers and the mountains. So are the people of South Africa diverse as well.
That's fabulous. What was this word you used there? Pochikos? Is that?
Yes.
Did I
It,
get
it,
that
it's,
right?
yeah, it's an Africa. I like your pronunciation. First time using it. Portugal spelled. It's an Afrikaans term. Afrikaans is one of the languages spoken here in South Africa. A rich language. I've myself had to learn out of interest. My surname Blom, even though I'm Xhosa, is an Afrikaans surname as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So Portugal is like a pot. It's got legs. You put in a fire, and then you mix your things. So pochi, you put your meat, you put your potatoes, you put your onions, and this lovely stew comes up. So we're saying South Africa is a mixture of many identities, is a mixture of many interests, is a mixture of many cultures.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
as you describe them, these cultures, it's not merely at surface level in the way the kind of foods and the way that people prepare and serve it, or the clothes that you might see them wear, but actually in their behavior too. So in the way people express themselves, different communities, you might expect different behaviors. Is that right?
Yeah, 100% yes. There are things that we are very common at, and those things might be sport, and we might like certain music. But as you say, if you go deeper, each group or cultural group will have different celebrations, different belief systems. Each group will have different way of doing things. One group might prefer this. They're all human beings with ears and eyes, different skin tones and different skin colors. So all of that is a reflection of one nation, but many cultures. Because of our various different backgrounds, then our belief systems, how we were raised, our views, we then can tackle the same issue in so many different ways. And that difference is not a risk, and that difference is not a baggage, and that difference is not an inhibitor. Because as a country, we want to celebrate that difference, and we want to acknowledge that I and so do not see things the same way. And how do we use that diversity to build something better? Because each one of those particles can be used, or those cultures are so critical in building a better country, a better corporate world, better families as well.
I love that, Samkelo, and I'm thinking that is part of the motor, the energy of South Africa, this diversity. But it might need some management. It might need some kind of intelligent planning, the kind of work that you do with Namatu for an
Mm,
organization that, as you say, you cannot treat South Africans as a block if you
mm.
want to really succeed there. So what kind of advice are you giving to international clients who are working in South African culture or bringing South Africans into international projects? What do they need to know as a starting point about South African culture?
And I think the first one is to be aware
Hmm.
of the country and the various cultures, as I've already mentioned as
Mm.
well. And also to be aware that one size does not fit all. Something that might have worked in a country like UK might not work in South Africa. And also to come and enter the country as a learner when one wants to do business and observe that certain cultures, certain belief systems will influence the business. Like in the work I'm doing now with our client in pharmacy across Africa, I learned something quite interesting. That in Ivory Coast, when you want to go and discuss a business deal, the first meeting is simply an intro meeting. You cannot in any way discuss the business. So you go in the first hour, you have a meeting. It's purely intro. You can't even mention anything about the deal, about the product, the value proposition, and the market. Only in the following meeting.
Mm.
Now, if one does not appreciate those kind of things, one could lose a business deal. And that's the same when you go to China or when you go to Japan or any country. So if one came to South Africa, one must be aware of the various ways of doing business and what might work and not work. And one must be open. One cannot say it worked in Russia, it
Mm.
worked in Ohio, so why
Mm.
doesn't it work over here? So one must acknowledge and be aware, and one must be confident to ask, to say, and to use words, help me to understand this, to seek validation and also to seek clarity. And not to assume that because it's in South Africa, in Africa, everything is dark and all of that. But realize that yes, we are in South Africa, but also we're quite advanced in terms of technology, in terms of knowledge, in terms of skill and capabilities as well, infrastructure, telecommunication. So we're quite advanced in those things. But the men and women who are in South Africa are very proud of their culture, very proud of their identity. So sometimes you might say something, sometimes you might do something that you are not aware that it's offending. That thing
Mm.
could either be showing respect, that thing could be either not shaking a hand. This is pre-COVID, obviously. That thing could be either interrupting someone. So those small nuances are critical in learning the culture in South Africa. One size does not fit all.
Um, yeah, so there are some, maybe taboos is a too strong a word, but um, mat- some social rules to observe when you start to work with South Africans, like this not getting straight down to business
Mm.
and the handshaking and so forth. So if you are, let's say we have to design training for,
Mhm.
as you do,
Mm.
for companies starting to work with South African teams. What's going to be on the agenda? How do you bring these topics to the fore?
Mm.
Can you talk a little to the kind of design of training around these topics?
It's interesting. I'm doing training in KwaZulu Natal, one of the provinces, tomorrow online, and I'm a Xhosa, which is one of the groups in South Africa. And the people I'm going to be training with, some of them might be Zulus, and some of them might be Indian, and there might be also white people there as well. So in other cultures, in other countries, you go straight to the topic of the training. These are the learning objectives. What we're going to be covering. I have to spend almost 30
Mm.
minutes first off, and some people might think it's a waste of time, but relationships and connecting is so critical in South Africa. Before you talk about what is it that you present, so I have to spend time getting to know who are my delegates, what are they expecting, and what makes them tick. Just to create that safe space for them as well. What are their fears? What are their concerns around this program? And what language are they comfortable that we use? Because there might be somebody sitting in that program whom English is not their language. So they might ask that is it possible to interpret other things or to translate other things in Zulu? So also to do that as well, but also to give or provide a chance to learn from each other. So I need to be conscious. Whereas in some countries, when you train, you go straight. Welcome. This is a leadership training program. These are the 5 modules. It's planning, it's controlling, it's budgeting. Yeah, you have to work on the
Seen that
relationship.
done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm, mm. Um, that's excellent. It's very interesting. You mentioned training with Zulus here.
Hmm.
So one thing that I want to kind of understand from this conversation, obviously there's many special things about South Africa and South African culture. Um, I'm wondering what is the African layer of that culture. So some of the things which that you help people coming from outside to understand when they are starting to work with South Africans are kind of African phenomena. But you're
Hmm.
also training people for, as you've told me before, people from Rwanda, people from Ivory Coast, people from other regions of Africa. So what would other Africans need to know when they come to South Africa about succeeding in South African culture?
Yeah, I think for other Africans who come and build businesses or integrate, some things might be easy because the sense of Africanness, the sense of
Mm,
community. If I speak to somebody from Kigali and they speak their language, there are certain parts that I can easily catch up. If somebody speaks Swahili, in the African culture, respect is quite a very big thing. Whereas in certain cultures, in the Western culture, someone can say to their parents, "No, Dad, what you're saying does not make sense, or you're talking nonsense. It's a bunch of hogwash." And yes, you can say that, but in the African culture, you have to find a diplomatic, much more better way to
hmm
say to say that. So to answer your question, with regards to being Africans, it might be easy for one to navigate and relate because we share the same community, because we share the same almost similar values and belief systems, and also the respect for one's identity, the respect for one's culture as well. Some people, like simple thing, Dave. Some people might eat, Richard. Some people might eat with their hands, and yet some people they prefer to eat with fork and knife, and for other people it's normal to eat with their hands. So you share something like that. Hence I said earlier on, it's important to learn and understand that. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
not, and also not to be negative or to be judgmental
hmm
of a behavior, a practice that does not make sense to you, whether someone's listening to music or doing something, to always be open. If I went to a market, to a meat market, hopefully not Wuhan in China, but I went to a meat market in China and I see people chopping and doing all of those things. That's who they are. That's how they do it. And I, as a foreigner, I need to respect that.
mm mm. That's a kind of a very inclusive idea of African culture that already gives you a great starting point when working with people from other regions.
Mm.
You mentioned earlier some of those unifiers in South African culture, sport being one of them.
Mhm.
Can you expand on that? What are the other things that really bring all South Africans together?
I think some of the things that bring us all together is this identity that we are here. This is our home. So we share the same identity. We share the same aspiration of progressing, of building our country and letting it go forward. We might not always exhibit it like that. We might get so emotional and we might get so energetic because we hold certain particular beliefs. But all of us, we have a desire to take the country forward. We might share we might share the same kind of listening and the same kind of reading, and but also we might share the same beliefs about family. That yes, with different colors, yes, with different nationalities, but guess what? We love our families.
Mm.
Guess what? We want the best education for our kids. And guess what? We're an open society. So whether I'm transgender, whether I'm gay, or whether I'm lesbian, yes, in certain corners you might find some people being conservative, but as the country has evolved, if I've got a gay partner or a lesbian partner, it's still when some people they might struggle given their background, but hey, guess what? It's open. I guess what I'm trying to say is there are also unifiers, and in our work in diversity and inclusion, we help individuals, we help leaders and companies also to look at the things that unify. What is our intent? What are
Mm.
the values that bring us together? Our value in South Africa is the value of building a better country.
Well, that's
It's a value of an identity that, hey, this is home for us. Ekaya.
that that's a fabulous description of kind of a response to the original question that I posed about how meaningful is the whole idea of national culture in such a diverse situation. Can you maybe wrap up with a few words about how you talk about the national culture in that sense? How quickly does it kind of break into its constituent parts, and how much time can you spend on that kind of unifying dialogue that you're in with clients and training participants?
Because of our history and a painful one,
Mm,
and one must always acknowledge that
mm,
South Africa has a painful history. Apartheid was not a policy that was really fair, and it was judged as crime against humanity, and it had social consequences. It had consequences on education, in terms of which group of people you would see becoming engineers or accountants and things like that. Investments in education as well. So it can be so easy to ignore that. But also because of the history, sometimes we can focus on the things that divide us than on the things that bind us as a people. So when we work, we say, yes, we acknowledge that we don't see things in the same way, but look what combines us, look what brings us. We all want this organization to succeed.
mm,
We all want the men and women who work here to grow as far as they can grow,
mm.
which sometimes, and I must be honest, females have got more challenges and obstacles that they need to overcome. And we must not lose sight of that our sisters, our aunts, our women are facing more challenges than women. A friend of mine says it very well. She's a lady. She says, Samkelo, we both can fight against racism. But once we've fought that battle, you as a male, you are done. I, as a woman, as a lady, as a mother, I still then have got the gender battle to fight. And I think we must not forget that in the work we do in diversity, includes that women face a particular complex obstacle, ceiling, jokes, practices, and behaviors that don't help them to succeed, even in the South African context.
Well, I think they have a powerful ally in you, Sankelo, and I'm personally just delighted to hear the force with which you can describe these unifiers about South African
Mm.
culture, and the kind of recognition that there's a lot of achievement happened, but a lot of work to do before you get to the
Mhm.
place where you want to be.
Mm.
Talking of which, you've very generously agreed to deposit a tool into our intercultural toolbox, the kind of
Mm.
things that help us achieve greater diversity and international understanding in our
Mm.
work. So, what might that be? What is Samkelo's contribution to the intercultural toolbox?
I think for me, being part of the global think tank on HR, one of my associates and colleagues is David Walsh, who's in Ireland, and he's the one who led me to Culture Connect, which then teaches you about the various cultures across the globe, the various nationalities across the globe in terms of how they look at tasks, roles, conflict. So how does someone in Denmark look at conflict? How does someone in Australia look at conflict? So we look at the various nationalities. So that for me, the Culture Connector tool is a very powerful tool that one, in terms of corporate organization, when you've got different nationalities, that one can use. In the South African context, one also will then also need to, once one has got those results, if one is a multinational company, has got various nationalities, once one has got the results, then one will need to do some coaching and say, right, what does this mean for us? How does this hinder our work when I don't understand how Dave views conflict or task as well? Yeah.
Well, that again, you're being too generous there, Samkelo. I'm delighted that you put that in the intercultural toolbox, but because it's something that I already know something about. I'm curious about other tools which you might be using in your work. Be they ideas, something very practical, some frameworks you've worked with, maybe some props you use in training. Maybe you could explore one of those. What would you?
Yes, yes, by all means. But I mentioned Culture Connect because
Mm,
for me it's been an eye opener. I myself have completed the survey, and the results for me were quite amazing, And for me, it clicked on certain issues as well, At a work level, at Nomadu Consulting, because we work with diverse group of people.
mm,
I'm a firm believer in coaching for diversity for leaders. So there we work on inclusive leadership, where we work with leaders to understand their own blind spots. But it's a nice, open, safe space. It's one-on-one, and sometimes it's teams where a leader can share his or her own biases and how those impact how he leads, how he coaches. So practically, how would that show itself up? I'm a leader. I'm a white South African. I don't want to say something to someone of a different nationality or culture in case I offend that person. But yet performance is not going ahead. How do I deal with that? So in coaching for diversity, we address that. Another thing we do a lot before we do any work with any organization, when our clients come to us, they will say, can you please come and help us? We need fixing. We say, okay, thank you. What is the problem? How does it manifest itself? How is it hitting your revenue and your finances? Before we go ahead, can we please do a needs analysis? What is presently happening with regards to diversity, inclusion, and belonging in your organization? What is the base mark? And then we say, where do you want to be? And we show them the results. Because the solution that works for company A might not work for company Z. So that is why we do.
Yes,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. Is there a tool related to needs analysis that you particularly lean on that you would like to share?
Yes, so we've got our own online survey that we do with our clients,
Mhm.
and it asks questions around communication at work, learning and development at work, relationships at work, if process and systems at work. Then the last part, it measures diversity and inclusion. So it's got statements like, I feel included at work. There are opportunities for me to grow and develop in this organization. My ideas and thoughts are listened to in this company. My values are aligned. So that area only measures diversity. Whereas first we began by communication, learning and development, working relationship. So that's done online, and clients individuals in the company can complete, and then we can see the results on the score. The results can tell us, what do young people who work in the company think? What do older people think? What do people of color, black, African, Indian, colored think? What do men and women? The same question around communication. How did men answer that question? And how did women answer that question as well?
Is there a particular question which comes up again and again in the analysis? Well, you said company A is different from company Z, but is there a question which you find very often leads to kind of fruitful insights into the kind of issues you'll tackle? Is there like something specific we could pull out of that needs analysis that is a door opener to the solutions?
Yeah, and we've seen that same question now because we've done the same survey online with our clients in the US. And it's a statement, I feel included at work.
Right.
Before we start our work, people tell, oh no, our teams are good, everyone is included. We've got values, we do coffee sessions. If we connect online, we're a great team. But once we see the results under that statement, I feel included at work, people get shocked.
Mm,
They're like,
mm,
what?
mm,
Is this so low? We say, no, no. This is what
mm,
people come to. And also then we take it to the level of say, this is what managers indicated under the statement or under this question as well. So to link to your word, it becomes an opener because people are saying, wow, I'm surprised because I thought we were inclusive. I
mm,
thought our benefits I thought the way we did our work and we always check in, we even got sessions, we send out surveys. So no, you are doing those things, but the men and women who work in your organization, they don't feel included because certain decisions are made excluding them. Or sometimes they find out later. Yeah.
Powerful stuff. So the simple statement, I feel included at work, and the results of that in your surveys. Well, this is fabulous. Thank you very much, Samkelo, for sharing this today. You've been very gracious. You've been generous with your time and with those insights, and I'm really glad that you could join us today. I'm sure that this is going to spark a lot of questions and ideas amongst the listeners. So is there a good way for people to contact you if they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can either contact us through our website, www.nomatu, N for number, O, M for mother, A, T for Tommy, U for umbrella, nomatu.co.za. I've also got a LinkedIn profile, Samkelo Blom, or we've got a LinkedIn profile for Nomatu as well. My email address is Samkelo B for Blom, or B for brother, at nomatu.co.za. And I would love to engage, and I would love to get questions and assist where we can assist in the space of diversity, inclusion, and belonging, which we always say it's not a destination, it's a journey.
Well, this has been a fabulous start to my journey to discover something about South African culture, and thank you for being our guide today. That's fabulous. I'm sure that your inbox is going to be full of new people reaching out. So again, thank you very much. We're honoured to have you as a guest, and we look forward to talking again.
Only a pleasure. Thank you very much, Richard, and thank you for your time as well.